Yo, what's going on, guys? Watomarmelon back here again for a January 31st Market Watch. We're going to start things off with Amazing Defenders, a set that a lot of people have said is one of the worst sets of all time. Before we begin, as always, if you click the eBay links in the description and then you make any purchase on eBay within 24 hours of clicking the link, doesn't cost you anything extra, and I get a commission, so I appreciate everyone who goes on eBay after clicking these links. So, and then also, if you enjoy, make sure to like and subscribe, all that sort of stuff. But without further ado, let's get into it. Actually, the card that I said I might be interested in, the Purely card, as a collector rare, market price of around $75. This thing far and away has been the leader for Amazing Defenders. Who knows where it will end up after all is said and done. One thing that's pretty consistent for this set is that the number of listings of these collector rares is quite low when you compare it to other collector rare sets. What that tells me is that this set was very much under-ordered. Now, that doesn't mean that I think it's very smart to go in on these cards, because I don't know, where the ceiling is for a lot of these things. How high can Purely actually get? $75 to me sounds like a pretty high value for a card that I don't think is taking the metagame by storm. I have heard it's better than what people were saying, or what they thought it might be, but $75 is a lot for a collector rare, and a lot of the older collector rares, like recently, I forgot to bring this up, Venomenaga, for example, is a $15 collector rare now. That's one that looks beautiful, and I wouldn't say the card is iconic by any stretch of the imagination, but it's something that collectors of GX do enjoy, especially that original secret rare. So to see a card like that at $15 when its foiling was done pretty well, I think there's a ways for Purely to drop from 75. I think I said that I would buy it if it was like 20 or 30 bucks. Obviously, that's not what it ended up being. So, I'm not really in the market for this at all. Some of the other ones, one for one, that's interesting. They have a lot of these, I wouldn't call them staple spell cards, but, ones that you can use in certain scenarios, things like Cosmic Cyclone, that they've sort of been putting in as collector rares. I do think it looks quite nice. I saw a video where a guy pulled it, but I don't really think that this has incredibly high ceiling as a collector rare. Some of the other cards, I'm not really interested in these mirror or the Mikanko archetype. That's not really very interesting to me. Isolde is a playable card, so people want to max rarity it. Then you got more of this sort of Purely engine down here. Not really super interested in any of that stuff. You do have Renaud, which was the Infernoble card that was very usable as a out of Tomb Chaos that did not get the collector rare upgrade. So they did upgrade it in Amazing Defenders. My understanding is that Infernobles are not really the top of the metagame and haven't been for a long time. Maybe they'll get some support and it'll go up, but at the current moment, I think that $38 is pretty high for that card. I do like these Rescue Haste cards, but not enough to spend $30 on one of the collector rares, that's for sure. So, we'll see where those ones end up. And then Card Trooper is the one that I guess collectors were more targeted for, because this is a usable card in Edison format, and it's something that people who played the game in the GX era definitely remember, especially sort of later GX era when this was around. Very strong card, but I don't really know that people are clamoring for a collector rare version of it. And so to see this go up would be a little bit surprising for me, especially when you compare it to some of the other collector rares from previous sets that have not performed particularly well. So overall, Amazing Defenders, not really a great set for value. There are some interesting cards. I'm wondering if they're going to have to start tweaking the collector rare formula, because the last couple of sets that have been collector rare side sets have done very poorly. So we'll see where they end up. I imagine they're going to do some tweaks to it. Next up, as always, quick look at Ghosts from the Past 2. Not a whole lot has happened since we last talked. I think some of these cards have gone up. Actually, I think most of the top ones have gone slightly up since I last covered it. Not really anything to write home about, though. And some of the bottom ones, like Eye of Timaeus, have continued to drop. I don't know that a lot of people are after this card. It's an interesting card, but I don't think it's one that people really care about in Ghost to Rare. I've always been looking at sort of Blue Eyes Ultimate, Cyber Dragon as ones that are really nice rarities of pretty iconic cards that people might want to pick up because, for example, Cyber Dragon, are you really going to pick up the first edition Ultimate Rare? There isn't a lot of Unlimited Ultimate Rare. I think it was only printed in the EU. It's a nice mid rarity. Well, Ghost Rare is a high rarity, but definitely not as rare as the original Ultimate Rare. And then the rest of the set kind of sucks. Might be some penny stocks. I actually opened up a case of this with a friend, so I have a lot of this stuff. I sold off all the Alubers back when that was high because I had a feeling it was only going to drop. And then I was like, the rest of them were dollar or less cards. Now I'm starting to see that some of these have sort of picked up in value, so we'll see where those end up. Next up, we have Dark Magician, the 25th anniversary artwork. I'm wondering if they're going to start inserting more of these sort of ultra rare 25th cards in any of these sets. It kind of surprises me that this was a one-off, but I guess, maybe this could be a one-off because the remaining artworks were all put in the Megatins. As you can see, this card has performed quite well in the past 3 months. It's starting to go up. You can find near mint copies for around $95. This was an $80 or so card for some time, although I don't know if the market price necessarily reflects that. Next up, we have kind of a random card out of Speed Duel Tournament Pack 2. We have King of the Skull Servants. Very bizarre card, although you can see that there were some sales today. I don't know who's buying this card. Have actually been a couple of sales recently. I guess this is probably the high rarity of King of the Skull Servants, if that's what you're into. You can find some copies for around $90. Aren't a lot of listings, but also, the demand for this card is not going to be as high as for a lot of the other collectible cards. So we'll see where this one ends up. This isn't one that I would put my hands on, but, if you're interested in sort of Speed Duel tournament packs, this is a pretty cool looking card. And I think the highest rarity of King of the Skull Servants. Next up, this is one that I noticed in the previous market watch, and you can see that this has really sort of just gone up over the past 6 months. This LOB Unlimited. It's kind of hard to use first edition prices because they don't really sell at all. But you can see that, people are still interested in Blue Eyes, and I think there is a bit of an overcorrection on some of these, unlimited cards, especially the original print Unlimited. I guess, newest reprints, the 2017 reprints of this card, I could see them continuing to fall. These are the 25th announcement. In fact, I think they should probably fall. But the original printing of this card has done quite well. I don't have eBay auctions, but I know people are really picking this up. One thing that I would recommend if you're trying to complete a binder and you're not super sensitive about condition, although I will notice that I think a lot of people have realized this because there are the fewest amount of lightly played listings, but you can get lightly played copies of these cards. They're often quite likely to be original print or like 2004 print, something like that, because the 2017 print cards are usually near mint, and so you can get a nice binder copy for a lot cheaper, and it is often the original printing of the card because TCG Player does not distinguish between original prints and the 2017 printing. We'll see if the 25th printing has some sort of designator that's easy to identify. I have a feeling it will, but we'll see where it ends up. Next up, we have Millennium Shield. This is a card that I was looking to complete my collection, and I didn't realize how expensive it had gotten. You could see that there is currently one listing of near mint Millennium Shield for $500. Obviously, no one should pay that. Looking through recent sales, we can filter them, see if any near mints have sold. And you can see that people were picking these up around a month ago for a little over $50, around $60. They're all cleaned out now. There literally is nothing you can buy, which is interesting. I mean, I love Millennium Shield, but I don't think McDonald packs are as rare, or they're rare enough to warrant sort of these sort of absurd prices. Obviously, no one's paying $500 for a near mint copy of this, but it really is a difficult card to get your hands on at this point in time. $32 for a lightly played. if you want this for your collection, you might have to suck up and pay a bit more than you might want to. Next up, we have sort of the miscellaneous promotional cards. These are the stay-at-home promos. I haven't looked at this particular one that often. This is the highest value of the stay-at-home promos. Although I will say that this has other printings of the card, like the Ghost Rare out of the first Ghost from the past, that make me a little hesitant to pick it up. Obviously, it's a Blue Eyes card. Obviously, it's limited to probably around 1,000 copies of the card. There's some, my understanding is that the United We Stand had fewer printed than the other ones, or maybe they had the same amount printed, but fewer released because when they originally released it in North America, only 150 people entered out of, I think they were offering around 300, so 150 of them were not distributed. Now, they might be distributed in the future. Konami might have thrown them away. That's what they probably should have done. But who knows where they end up. They might have been given away to employees. So the United We Stand technically should be a bit more difficult to get your hands on. Certainly when you compare the US to the EU got 400 copies, the US got 150. It is reflected in sort of how few listings there are in North America. So I do believe that there are only 150 or so released in North America. And so the total amount I think should be 300 Latin America, 400 Europe, and then 150 out of North America, so around 850 of United We Stand versus around 1,000 for the other ones. So that's something to note. You can see that 830 for this one, and then United We Stand, you can get them for 660. And some sellers have started to line up. This was one that really had very few listings on TCG Player for a long time, although you're starting to see a bit more competition. I'm sure you can get it for cheaper on eBay, though, because you have a lot of people that are not professional sellers. TCG Player is kind of saturated by more professional card shops and professional sellers, or more experienced ones, whereas these cards were really distributed to more Yu-Gi-Oh fans that might not be sort of in tune with selling on TCG Player. Much more, I think it's more likely to get a good deal on eBay. Next up, we have Magic Ruler, Blue Eyes Toon Dragon. Awesome card that is quite expensive. I was looking at it to complete one of my binders. $150 for a near mint copy, and then lightly played is much more in sort of the reasonable wheelhouse at $50, and mod play is around $33. So this card has gotten quite expensive. It's one of the ones that sort of stuck its price. I think people are pretty willing to shell out for such an iconic card. One of the best secret rares from the original sets. Next up, we have Dark Magician Girl, the Dragon Knight out of Dragons of Legend. One of the more iconic mid-era cards. I think this was released in 2013. It's crazy to think that this is a 10-year-old card, but it's starting to become, not vintage. Definitely not, but I wouldn't consider this sort of a modern card or a super ultra-modern card. So when you look at it, tons of Korean ones. So if you look at the near mint copies and do listings without photos, you can see that near mints are going to run you around $80 to $85 for unlims, and then first edition is only a little bit more at $94. Let's just see for heck's sake. Lightly played is around $40, so not too bad. Definitely, a pretty accessible at lightly played card for sort of mid-era collectors. And this is definitely one of the more iconic mid-era cards. To sort of round things out, we have a look at Magnificent Mavens. I don't really know what to think about these Pharaoh's Rares. I think if these get released in another set, which, there's no indication that they won't be, because originally it was a gimmick for the God cards released in King's Courts, and then they sort of switched it over and added it into Magnificent Mavens. I don't consider this to be a particularly appealing rarity. I think it's, it's not bad, but it's not like a Starlight Rare or Collector Rare or an Ultimate or Ghost. But it's a bit crazy for me to see sort of these Dark Magician Girl Secret Pharaoh Rares so expensive relative to what they are, considering there's already a Secrets, rare out of Magician's Force that's cheaper than this in Near Mint Unlimited, and then some of the other ones are still pretty expensive. The one thing I can think of is that these are a bit harder to get than a lot of the other ones because there are 18 in the set. I think the actual pull rate for an individual Secret Pharaoh's rare is pretty comparable to an individual Starlight rare out of a core set. Um, However, the Secret Pharaoh rares were only released in North America, whereas the Ultra Pharaoh rares were released in Europe. So these are a little bit harder to get, and I'm assuming that Magnificent Mavens was ordered a little bit less than some of the core sets because people didn't really know what to expect for this set, and previously sets in this slot have performed quite poorly. But I don't really think the Secret Pharaoh's rare warrants the premium that it's getting on a lot of these things. I've said that Seal of Orichalcos is my favorite. It's the only one I really look at and say, that's one that's interesting. There are a couple other ones that I think are, not too bad, like Mirrored Force. The ones where there's less going on in the actual picture. There's more area for you to see sort of the hieroglyphs, and they don't already have like a high rarity printing. For example, Reinforcement of the Army, there was that collector's rare out of King's Court. Why is that getting printed in this? Necro Valley has an ultimate rare. Blackluster Soldier of Chaos has had a ghost rare and an ultimate rare and an original print secret rare. So I don't know why they put it in here. A lot of this stuff just doesn't make sense. Neos is one that's sort of been clamoring for, I think, a high rarity printing, but I don't think that this feels like a Starlight rare or collector's rare. I would much rather have gotten a Neos in sort of Starlight or collector's. So I'm not a huge fan of putting it as a Secret Pharaoh's rare. And then when you look at sort of the 2006 collector's tin version, which is sort of the original high rarity, albeit only a secret rare and not the original printing, and also a promo, so mass released, you can see that near mint copies are under $30, so still very affordable. And when you compare it to the price, market price 110, lowest listed, 100 of Neos for the Secret Pharaoh's rare, to me it makes a lot more sense to get the 2006 collector's rare or collector's tin variant. So let me know what you guys think. Longer market watch. I think I did my last one around 2 weeks ago. But if you did enjoy, like, subscribe, click the eBay links, all that sort of stuff. It's been your boy Watomarmelon, and peace out.